Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to continue our journey into Transformers Shattered Glass by taking a look at issue number 2. Since the end of the Great War, Megatron has abandoned the Decepticons in favor of seeking out a solitary existence in the deepest, least inhabitable regions of the Rust Sea. When the damaged Starscream makes a rough landing, the former Decepticon leader gruffly reminds Starscream that he asked to be left alone. When Starscream falls unconscious, however, Megatron's compassion compels him to bring Starscream inside his jury-rigged shelter and repair his former lieutenant. As soon as he regains consciousness, Starscream explains his recent run-in with Blur and the other body scrappers, who've put a bounty on his head after somehow catching wind of his recent activities. When the conversation turns to Starscream's former ally, Jetfire, Starscream abruptly changes the conversation to Megatron's dingy living quarters. As he takes in the sight of a tattered Decepticon poster on the wall, Starscream admits that it reminds him of the first time he ever saw Megatron. Before the war, Starscream was a scholar. He and Jetfire visited the Senate in Iacon to discuss funding for their work on the same day that Megatron held an anti-Emperata rally outside the building. The pair watch from the sidelines as an argument between Megatron and security officer Prowl over their right to protest turns heated. When Prowl accuses Megatron of getting away with his rabble-rousing only because Orion Pax lets him, the crowd looks on as Megatron loses his temper and throws Prowl aside. Starscream admits that this was the moment that inspired him to join the Decepticons. The idea of a lowly miner taking a stand against a bloated and corrupt Senate inspired him and countless other bots to rise up and join the Decepticons. Megatron's memory of that day is less rosy. However, that fight ended with his first arrest, and the Senate holding him up as an example to keep the other manual workers in their place. Megatron then asks Starscream why he came to him for assistance, and Starscream explains that with a target on his back, he needs help recruiting others to the cause. Megatron growls that Starscream would need a real leader to inspire a new generation of Decepticons, and Megatron is not a leader anymore. We then get a flashback to Megatron in a holding cell, and an officer abruptly tells Megatron that he's free to go. The moment he sets foot outside, he discovers that his friend Orion Pax has pulled some strings and cleared Megatron of all charges, despite an acidic comment that some jail time might have done the Decepticon leader some good. The subsequent argument marks the end of their friendship. Orion accuses Megatron of spreading chaos under the guise of empathy, and Megatron retorts by reminding Orion of his secret police and their role in Senator Shockwave's recent arrest and subsequent torture. The disagreement escalates into a full-on brawl. When Prowl and Chrome Dome step in to break up the fight, Pax instructs them to let Megatron go, despite Orion's warning that Megatron could have stood alongside him on the winning team. Megatron retorts that a bot like Orion could never share his power. As he and Starscream step out into the Rust Sea, Megatron privately reflects on his turbulent friendship with Orion. Did he allow him to pull strings out of genuine concern for the bots he'd be leaving behind if he went to jail, or out of his own selfish desires? Starscream snaps him back to the present. Although the Flyer begs Megatron to take up arms and fight the good fight again, Megatron shouts that he's not Decepticon leader anymore. His bad decisions cost them everything and lost them the war. In the past, Orion Pax, now Optimus Prime, turned his attention to Earth. The Decepticons fought to protect the planet and its supplies of rarefied energon, and as collateral damage continued to mount, their destructive conflict came to a head when the Autobots attacked Los Angeles. In what would become Megatron's final battle on Earth, the Decepticon leader led the charge and eventually threw himself into a duel against his old nemesis. If he could not kill Optimus, Megatron reasoned, then he could at least martyr himself for the cause. And although Optimus beat him to the brink of death before laying waste to Earth, Megatron somehow survived. Cursing himself for ever trusting Orion, Megatron eventually salvaged the ship and limped back to Cybertron, only to find that the triumphant Autobots had already conquered the planet. The tyrant he'd once called a friend had destroyed everything he'd ever worked for. Starscream, on the other hand, remembers the battle differently. Despite overwhelming odds, Megatron courageously led his men into battle, and a shot from his fusion cannon saved Thundercracker from Bumblebee, and the sight of their commander fighting on inspired them to redouble their efforts. Only when Optimus Prime arrived did Megatron choose to lay down his life for the cause, secure in the knowledge that his sacrifice would buy time for Starscream to coordinate the evacuation of Earth. Despite his hesitation, Starscream followed his orders to the letter, and although Megatron still thinks himself a failure, Starscream assures him that everyone who survived the battle survived because of him, and his willingness to lose to keep them alive. For too long, the Decepticons have kept to the shadows, but Starscream might have given the Decepticons a new edge. During the war, Megatron and Starscream discussed using Starscream's unique spark as an indestructible repository, and now Starscream's found a way to use that spark to reactivate the Titans and take back Cybertron. The first issue of Shattered Glass was a great introduction to this iteration of Transformers. But I love issue 2 so much more because it offered some valuable insight into the war on Cybertron, the war on Earth, and the relationship between Orion Pax and Megatron. We also get to see a different side of Megatron that we're not exactly used to. In this issue, he questions his ability as a leader on a regular basis, often feeling like he's not good enough, or that the decisions that he's made have negatively impacted the people around him. I also really enjoyed seeing a different side to Starscream and Megatron's relationship. Often we're used to Starscream always trying to scheme to overthrow Megatron, but in this issue we see a Starscream who really is loyal to his leader. If you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for my breakdown and review of issue number 3. See you next time.